Hello, good day. I'm Michael Worton. I'm chair of Cara, and I'd like to talk just for a little while about how we work and how the way that we work influences the way that we think we can help to develop our Syrian colleagues and all of the many at-risk colleagues throughout the world. Since 1933, we've had two absolutely core aims. The first one is a mission of rescue to help academics who have been or who are at the moment at risk of being persecuted, attacked or discriminated against by bringing them to sanctuary in the UK and increasingly to universities in Europe and beyond. And secondly, through a mission of rebuilding. We want, since 1933, to advance higher education by supporting academics in countries where their work is at risk or compromised, so those who are still in the country and not in exile. For instance, we have the Syria Programme, our very big programme of the moment. In the past, we've had an Iraq programme and a Zimbabwe programme, both of which I would venture to say have made a significant difference to the way those countries and the academics in them have been moving on since the programmes. We are, it must be said, a relatively small charity, yet I'm proud to say that we managed to help a lot of academics and their families. On our fellowship programme, which brings people to the UK to sanctuary and to work in universities, we're currently supporting 370 fellows and some 530 family members who come with them. On the Syria programme, we currently have more than 200 Syrians who are actively engaging with the Syria programme and a couple of hundred more who are registered with us and keep an eye on the things that we are doing. So we help a lot of people, but we are small. Now, I think one of the reasons that we're able to work successfully is because we have nearly 90 years of experience doing this and doing this in very different countries. We've got experience of working in very complex and very dangerous environments. So people know that we have a record of delivering on our rescue, on our professional development, and on our capacity building agendas. Crucially, I think whatever our individual political and moral positions may be for those of us who work in Cara, our position as an organisation is that we remain resolutely neutral. We are not an advocacy organisation. We are a rescue and rebuilding organisation. And this is one reason, I think, why we are so successful and why we can work so well is because we are trusted by many, many different kinds of parties. Now, it's the combination of our status as a charity and as a small institution that we've always had to work in partnership, depending on the work, the ideas, the input of others. And the notion of partnership working is important to us as an organisation, but it also informs the way that we think about how we engage with the individual academics with whom we work. Our most important partner is, by a fair way, the UK higher education sector. We work with 90 universities in the UK, which represents about 65% of all UK universities. And of course, we aim ultimately, soon, I hope, to be working with 100% of the UK universities. Very importantly for us is working with the national academies, notably the Royal Society and the British Academy, but also with the Royal Society of Edinburgh, for instance, and the Royal Society of Engineering. And we work with a growing number of learned and professional societies. So therefore, we have got institutional partnerships. We've also got individual partnerships with individual academics who, outside of their roles in their own universities, volunteer their help with us in many, many different ways. We've got 400 different individual academics from universities right across the UK who volunteer in many different ways, be it English for academic purposes, development, of academic skills, working as PIs, working as mentors or whatever. And in the fellowship program, bringing people to the UK, we have more than 500 individuals supporting our fellows, again, in many different ways. We work with many organizations in the public, private, charitable, and philanthropic sectors, ranging from benefactors of trusts and foundations, individual benefactors, with publishers, with educational technology organizations who can help to give discounts to our fellows, both in the UK and in our overseas work. Working with international NGOs. Flavia has already mentioned some of them, but I'd like to pay tribute especially to Pause in France, to the Scholars at Risk program, and also the Scholars Rescue Fund in the US, and the Philip Schwartz Initiative in Germany. We work very closely with each other. And interestingly, we are all slightly different. And I think it's the difference between the organization. We share, if you like, a moral view, a mission view, but the very difference of the way in which we work, I think, is an enormous strength as we can work and complement each other. We work also with UN agencies, of course, and being based in the UK, we work closely with the Association of Commonwealth Universities and so on. So if you like, we're working with a lot of very different kinds of organizations. There is a wonderful saying, which you find in many, many different countries, that it takes a whole village to educate a child. It's not just one school with its teachers, it's the whole village that educates the child. And I think in some ways, we at Cara would say it takes many different communities to develop an academic. And that's why our vision of helping our fellows, be they in something like our Syria program or in our UK fellowship program, what we're aiming to do is to enable their professional development, but also their entire development as a citizen of the world, helping them to settle into different communities, to work with the local communities where they live, as well as the local university environments in which they work, and so on. And it's due in many ways to the age of Cara, to the fact that we've been around for a long time, and to the depth and the breadth of our many partnerships, that we've been able to establish significant convening function, whereby we can bring together organizations and individuals to debate issues and work together to find solutions to problems, not always, but at least begin to see how we can find solutions to problems, and make recommendations, just as Flavia has made earlier, make recommendations for positive ways in the way that higher education works internationally, and especially how higher education internationally responds to conflicts and to other major societal and intra-societal partnerships. So if you like, partnership working is part of the DNA of Cara as an organization. And we see it also as essential and potentially transformative on the individual academic level. In the Syria program, for instance, we have a very strong focus on fostering research collaborations. And that's much of what we're talking about throughout the day this week. We've heard some marvelous interventions about research discoveries, about how people are working together and so on. But we recognize, we support and we celebrate those who choose to follow the path of the lone scholar. There are those who choose to do that, who choose to work alone, and we will always do all we can to support them in their own development, wherever they're taking it forward with our help. But we also explicitly and increasingly encourage our Syrian colleagues to work in teams and to understand what working in teams is, to reflect on what it means to work in teams rather than seeing it as something which is purely instrumental. We also, and here I pick up on something that Flavia mentioned as well, we are also actively encouraging in the Syria programme interdisciplinarity. And I'll speak a little bit later about how we envisage interdisciplinarity in the programme. The working in teams means that the management of a research project can be more complex because there are more people involved, but complexity is often a good thing. It's not always a bad thing, because everybody brings different perspectives to the management of the project. The benefits are therefore enormous, as these different perspectives challenge and enrich all stages of the research processes. Earlier, I spoke about Cara's convening function. Now here I'd like to take that notion of convening in organization and take a different image. And this also resonates with a word that Flavia used in her presentation. In research, and more broadly in academic development, we at Cara feel that we have an important brokering function, bringing together individuals who often know very little, sometimes virtually nothing about each other, but who will, we think, well and productively together. Just as it were, as a marriage broker seeks to bring together two people who don't really know each other, and the broker hopes that they've got the chemistry right and that the couple will have a long and happy marriage. We therefore spend a lot of time fostering professional communications and connections between scientists and scholars in the UK and beyond by finding appropriate principal investigators, PhD supervisors, mentors, and so on for our researchers. And it is a process which we spend a great deal of time on trying to find the right partner. They begin as strangers. We want them to become collaborators, and ultimately we hope they will also become friends. And it is gratifying to note that some of these one-to-one connections that we have brokered in the recent past, for instance, have already blossomed into long-term collaborations where trust and respect are shared on both sides. Now, as Robin was saying in his opening welcome, the academic world, the academic profession is a different thing today than it was perhaps even just 10, 20 years ago. We're constantly being expected to do more and more and more as our governments and other funders request us to go in different directions and bring different kinds of outputs and outcomes to our work. We're now expected to be much more professional in the ways that we undertake our teaching, our examining, and so on, all of our research activities. And we're also expected not only to publish in academic journals, in monographs, in a variety of different ways, but also to disseminate our findings to non-specialist general audiences. Now, there are many ways of disseminating work, and it's important to work out how best to achieve our own aims as researchers, and that's why we work with our fellows on dissemination activities increasingly, because you can disseminate by doing it yourself or with your academic partners and collaborators. You can do it by persuading others, such as people as different as artists, performers, communication professionals, or whatever, to disseminate your ideas. But it's bringing in different perspectives on what can be done with research funding that seems to us an important part of career development today. And allied to dissemination is something very close to my own heart, which is the mission of public engagement, which is now certainly in this country and increasingly in other countries regarded as an expectation of academics. And this involves public engagement, involves the many ways in which the activity of higher education and the benefits of higher education and research can be shared with the public, who are, after all, the major funders of the HE system through their taxes. We often think that it's the government who are making our decisions, but we must never forget it is the taxpayer who is funding a great deal of what we're doing. Therefore, we need to find new ways of communicating with the broader, what we call the general public. And what is essential about dissemination of research, in my view, is that it is always a two-way process. It moves beyond our traditional ways of publishing our research findings, which is a gift largely to the academic community, but beyond for those who are interested. Dissemination is taking that step further. Again, it is a sharing, a giving, but public engagement involves interaction, two-way interaction, deep listening, not simply surface listening, with a goal of achieving and generating mutual benefits, learning, developing, gaining new sites and so on, but it's all about mutuality. And at best, I would argue that public engagement involves participatory research. General public are involved in the research process itself, not as grateful recipients, but as co-creators of the research process, including the research process. This will mean, of course, that we will have to learn new communication, new participatory skills. We'll need also to change our mindsets and learn how to translate our specialist academic language into clearer discourse that everyone can understand. And this is where I think there is an important link with interdisciplinarity. Interdisciplinarity seeks to address global challenges such as the SDGs, which are underpinning all of the work this week, but also national issues of societal urgency, which cannot be solved by any single urgency. Sometimes in academia, we are not perhaps always as humble as we might be. I think it's important for us to recognize that there is no one individual academic, there is no one discipline that actually has all the answers to the problems that beset us. And the more that we learn and listen from and listen to each other, I think the better. And interdisciplinarity functions through the pooling of very different reservoirs of knowledge, but also different insights, different methodologies, different perspectives, different assumptions, and indeed different academic prejudices. This pooling, I think, therefore leads to a kind of cauldron whereby there operates a kind of modification of disciplinary approaches. Everybody learns, everybody makes compromises and modifications to their disciplines. We do need to learn we need to learn the language of different disciplines sufficiently well to talk to other researchers and understand the relevance and the importance of their contributions to a project. And we need also to learn how to translate our own disciplinary language for others. I would also, though, argue that strong disciplines are essential for effective interdisciplinary research. I think what we're seeing across the world, notably in the United States at the moment, is that people are turning away from saying we must do everything only in interdisciplinary institutions, but actually realizing that we need to build very, very strong disciplines before we can then get them to work together in genuinely creative ways. So in many ways, the essence of interdisciplinarity lies in its recognition and in its exploitation of the creative power of difference. The success of higher education, I would argue, is dependent on international and, importantly, intercultural collaborations and partnerships. These partnerships are structured activities of and with difference. This is why we are keen to help academics to become active members of international networks and communities of scientists and scholars. And again, this is a two-way process. Every single Cara fellow, wherever she or he comes from, whatever their discipline, wherever they're working, enriches and in some way changes the people they're working with. Our universities in the UK are being slowly, gradually, but significantly changed over the years as more and more people come from Syria, from other conflict zones, from other countries and regions where there is persecution of academics because of what they believe, because of who they are, because of what they publish, and so on. And in many ways, therefore, they bring change which is not only academic, but which is cultural and social as well. Partnership working in all aspects of academic life leads to ever greater fulfillment and ever greater understanding. That's why we think it is so important. And I would like here to end in a conference which has a lot about science, the social sciences, the humanities, and so on, with just a reflection on something that the great German philosopher of the 20th century, Martin Heidegger, said in a very important work on what sameness and difference are about. He's a very difficult, but absolutely astonishingly brilliant and thoughtful and insightful philosopher. So I'll paraphrase what I think he's saying. He says, and it seems very simple, I can only say the same as you because I know that I am different from you. And I can only say to you that I'm different from you because I assume and know that there is some underlying sameness that binds us together. So sameness and difference are not binary opposites. They're not in any kind of opposition. They are in a kind of interactive, cognitive, social, and cultural dance. To live in and with difference is a great challenge. It's not easy. It really isn't easy. It's a great challenge, but it is also a great joy. And most importantly, it is essential. That is why, for us at Cara, with working with all of the at-risk academics with whom we try to support as best we can, partnership working as embodied and dynamic difference is vital for all of us as academics.